that service and supply should be self-sufficient and it will be in India. So I'll start with Sudhir.
That's wonderful. First of all, I would like to thank W.Media for this opportunity to be at this stage. And this topic is really very relevant in the current scenario that we are looking in data center, where the data center's development is going through an exponential, demand that is coming out. Now, the development of local services, supplies, definitely had a lot of economical, technological, and social benefits as well. Uh, I'll read out couple of benefits that will come out from this whole. Number one, the more we actually depend on the locals, it actually helps you to drive the local community in terms of the money stays within India, right? So you actually helps the GDP. The second is it actually generates a lot of employment, and we would have seen that the government is under tremendous pressure on the employment, and hence it's really very important. The third that I could think of is an reduced dependency on the imports, and the current geopolitical situations that we have been seeing across, whether it is in West Asia or in Ukraine. So there has been uncertainties, and the more you are dependent on import, it actually creates uncertainty within your supply chain, and hence the localization depends on a resilient supply chain. While we are actually putting this, the what we all also can think of is the dependency, the locals will also help us in driving the speed to deliver. The more you have an import, the more higher is the lead time. But it is the need of the hour that the more and more actually becomes localized in whatever way that we can do. And the local, the companies that in India are driving towards that initiative to align with the overall government's objective of Make in India and Digital India and all that stuff. So that's how I can think of.
Um,
Yeah, thanks, Pulak. See, firstly, we have to all realize that we are in the middle of or in the starting phase of a next era of industrial revolution, which will be driven by AI and ML. So this is not a small change. This is a very big change that is coming in the world. That is number one. Second thing, to now every country will try to take a lead in this particular ecosystem, and the good thing is that India has established some lead. It may not be to the scale of what US has been doing in this space, but if you will see broadly in Asia Pacific, I think India has taken a lead in AI ML space. That is a very good sign for the country. Now we have to see whether we look at just as a data center piece or the complete ecosystem. And if we have to look at complete ecosystem, we have to look at complete supply chain. That is data center, the IT supply chain, the power supply chain, the sustainability supply chain. If holistically we will look at, then lot of billions of dollars we can add in Indian economy. And I think it is right time government start looking it as a ecosystem of opportunity rather than coming out with data center led policies in this space. Thank you.
exactly. Basanth, your
Thank you. So I think they touched upon the technological impact. They talked about economic impact. Most important is around getting the sovereign autonomy. So typically, if you look at today, the critical infrastructure that goes into a data center is the security aspect. You have a physical security, then you have cyber security. You really do not see an indigenously developed cybersecurity product that is widely used in our data center builds. That is going to be extremely key. Take a look at what happened when there was a patch update that happened from CrowdStrike on Microsoft. There was a complete global blackout. Just imagine there was an indigenous cybersecurity product which was developed, locally hosted, and we would have had absolute control on that incident. So that's going to be number one. Yes, GDP, it'll have a great impact. It'll also generate employment. We are a big beneficiary of the demographic dividends of what India has got to offer. So 50% of the population is less than 25. The biggest problem that we face today in the data center world, because I, as a service provider, work with them pretty much on a daily basis, is the talent pool and the talent gap that we see. So we will have to start working on building the talent, because this wave is here to stay for at least a good next to 7 to 10 years. The gentleman here both spoke about the AI wave, and that is only going to exponentially increase. And how we are going to address that is to have the right set of people with the right set of skill sets, so that we not only galvanize this opportunity, but also lead as the data center hub of the world.
Great. I think very rightly you said that while we see that there are a lot of positive points and positivity around that within the ecosystem we build this, but there could be another challenges. So one of the challenges you see already told about that the skill set of the people. Any other areas which you like to cover, the challenges on self-sustained model which we adopt?
See, on the self-sustainability from a India perspective rather than a colo perspective, if I have to speak, see, in a data center, 85% of the investment goes in IT. 15% of the data center investment goes in non-IT. All the DGs and the UPSs, batteries and everything. So first thing, if we have to grow the economy, 85% of that investment we will have to target, which is mostly all the hyperscalers are doing all the imports today. 0% is happening in India. Everything 100% is happening as an imported product. So I think as a government focus, we have to see how do we get that 84% manufactured in India. Second, I think the biggest investment area is all these solar plants and sustainable power. And for that, all these solar cells and everything that we still, a lot of that is imported from China and other places. So if we can have large scale factories which can manufacture a lot of them, and some of that effort has already started happening. And the third portion is definitely the non-IT part, all the DGs and everything, UPSs. But a lot of work happening in that space. OEMs are expanding their factories. Another area which India could leverage on is the automation in the data centers, the IoTs, the EPMSs, the automation, because software is our strength in India. So all these software related services, I think there is a room for doing a lot of work in and around data centers. Thank you.
Wonderful. Sudhir.
I will add here is what I see is there is with whatever surge that has happened in the demand, there is still an imbalance between the partner ecosystem and what the data center companies wanted to deliver. What I actually mean is the production capacities are yet not so much that actually they can cater to the entire demand, and hence there is an urgent need of to cater to the demand, that they ramp up the capacities while that is happening, but it is still lagging is what I can see. Most of the OEMs are either running full, or the delivery lead times today have initially whatever that 8 weeks are already gone to 16, and some cases it's even 24 plus weeks, which essentially gives you a feel that we are still at a stage where we will still struggle big time in terms of correcting this balance and deliver the data centers projects on time with the quality that we are actually aspiring for.
Right, right. Basanth, would you like to throw some lights in terms of, because you are in service sector?
No, sure, absolutely. Sudhir, I think he hit it on the nail. Convoluted supply chains did not end with pandemic, right? There's so much of political uncertainty. The macroeconomic factors are more uncertain than before. Another aspect that we see today is the inconsistency and the non-standardization in the new builds. So when I spoke about building skill sets, it's also about bringing the best practices from the other sides of the world. You look at US, you look at EMEA, the far more matured markets. So what we'll have to do is bring in the best practices, try to drive standardization. When you try driving standardization, which essentially means you know what exactly that you're going to arrive at or an outcome. And that's precisely where we as supply chain partners, we step in, we help in terms of doing the optimum design, and then we underpin the right technology stack to ensure that you're able to go live on date. Now, when that happens, the moment you're able to light up your services, in turn, you start billing your customers. And thereby, it not only sort of stops from delaying, but also ensuring that you're actually contributing to the economy as well. And with regarding to the renewable sources that we mentioned, one is harnessing of renewable resources is very important. But more importantly, bringing the grid scale battery system is very important. You can tap into the natural resources in various forms. It could be wind, it could be water, but bringing them, harnessing them, and storing it, and then providing us very strong last mile connectivity into these data centers from a common repository or a pool is going to be key. And this is not going to happen just from the DC operators. The government needs to step in, bring in probably subsidies, tax breaks, and various other incentives for this to happen. Another important aspect which I have seen in one of those 2023 Gazette notifications is around data management. So the government of India, me as an outsider who sits in Singapore, is probably one of those countries that I've seen has actually given the approval to manage the data that comes from enterprise and from customers outside of India to be managed. So which means that there is going to be an exponential demand on just pure play storage itself. Forget the computational aspect. And that is precisely when it becomes all the more important to ensure that the renewable energy is what we tap into and blend in as we move forward. It's not going to be an overnight, but it's going to be a gradual shift from fossil fuels, blending it in with the renewable resources.
Right, absolutely. I think that's a spot on. Do you think power and cooling also would be in this category where we should look at the self-sustained model within India?
See, I tell you one thing, we are all looking at still like next 2 years, 3 years kind of horizon. I think we should start thinking little long term now. Let's say 10 years if we have to do. Already in US, people are talking gigawatt data centers. Even there is a proposal with US government which is like 3 gigawatt or 4 gigawatt campuses. And I think it is a matter of time when we start seeing these kind of things in India. And if that has to happen, getting so much of solar power from some of the states routed to Mumbai or Chennai may not be that feasible.
Possible, correct.
Right? At the same time, India has limitations on the coal availability, right? Lot of coal that is
Yes.
indigenously provided is not of that much of power, and still lot of coal we get from Australia and Indonesia. So in such cases, I think some think tank has to start thinking about, is there a feasibility of nuclear power in India, and the small medium size reactors that people are talking of, at least from a long term horizon, some work has to start in that direction if we have to sustain this momentum of data center growth in India. Otherwise, at some stage after 4 years or 5 years, we may start seeing similar power availability issues like Singapore is seeing, or Dublin is seeing, which were the original data center hubs.
Correct. Sudhir, what is your view?
I think what he has mentioned is absolutely right. So data centers, we all know, is a power guzzlers, right? So, and in India, still, while cities may be very very convenient in terms of a power, but overall as an India, if you see, that's we still have a power challenges across various locations, and hence it's important that the power related is taken well right in that direction. Now a renewable energy, now the problem statement is, while on one side we need a huge power demand, the other side we also have to ensure that the sustainability goals are taken care of, and that's where this starts, the challenge starts. So more and more so whether solar or wind farms, now this, there is again an issue in terms of, because this area is very highly regulated by the government, right? So
Correct.
you will have, so that challenge also brings in a lot of limitations in terms of to what extent you go, to what extent you can plug in those kind of a gaps. But in all said, the dependency on the renewable energies has to go up, because the sustainability actually sits on the top of all of that. But at the same time, you'll also have to ensure that the enough of investment in the power segment is taken care of, because at the end of the day, data center is all about uptime. That's what I will.
Is it? I think you are right that government also has certain policies and regulations. So is there in favor of the data center industry, which is currently there, or we need to propose something different to the government to?
I
help?
don't think that it is actually in very specific to data center industry. It is very generic in this. Even whatever PPAs that we have been doing, or most of the data center companies are doing, they actually undergo a lot of restrictions in terms of whether it is a third party or likewise the captive PPAs. But I think there is a need of an hour that this area is relooked at in terms of how the entire program is set up, and the data center companies are allowed to be a power generators in it itself. Today, to be a power generator, you have to go through a lot of, the process, which is in itself is not so cumbersome. But I think there is a need that this area can be looked in much more holistically.
Wonderful. And now that Bipin sir, you come from the organizations where we know that organization is thinking towards renewable energy and all. What would be the company's strategy going forward to look at this space?
For us, it is twofold strategy. One, we are the only operator in India who has done vertical integration of solar power plants in data center business. We have established fully owned our own data center business as part of our data center company. So that is our first thing. That is in Nagpur. Already 50 megawatt is operational, and we plan to operationalize another 50 megawatt in next 5 to 6 months. So that takes care of Mumbai. But rest of the other locations, still we have to depend upon the other solar companies, and how do we source power from those solar companies. But goal is at least towards 2030, we should be fully on the renewable power. That is the goal we are working internally.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I think few seconds back we discussed that we think about say 10 years from now instead of 1 or 2 years ahead of us. Now my question is that if we are not able to do it, say by 2030 or 2028, 2025, what could be the issue? Basant, if you can start with.
Yeah, sure. So I think very clearly, the first, let me go ahead with the economic impact. It's a big missed opportunity, right? So it's already available to us, and we don't meet up to these requirements. In a sense, it'll have a direct impact on our economy, in our ability to employ meaningful jobs. And I think that will be a big missed opportunity. Moving on from economic, the technologically will continue to remain backward, because we had an opportunity to co-create, not indigenously develop products from ground up. So we had a great opportunity to work with a world-class product system that is already available. Then through knowledge sharing, we could have essentially leveraged on that. If that is not being done, we will continue to be left behind in the race. Because if you look at from an Asia perspective, forget the rest of the world, there's a massive amount of investments that is going into Southeast Asia and into North Asia regions. So that is on the technology impact. And then on the sustainability point, we are already literally running helter-skelter when it comes to our day-to-day activities, for water. Forget on the data center side, the large cities which are deprived of water. We speak about power. What about water usage efficiency? That's another big issue. So this has to be a collective approach, just not from data center operators, but from the entire ecosystem to say how it is to make it more sustainable. I guess all these three aspects needs to look into cohesively. To ensure that we are fully up to speed and we galvanize this opportunity as we move into in the next few years.
Wonderful, thank you. I think we see that from the conversation that there is a need, there is an effort, and if we do this, employment opportunities, GDP growth, import expenses reduced, all of the benefit, we are getting it. But there are simultaneously, we have challenges. And we simultaneously see that next 10 years, where it lands. What we as a group from data center industry, we should act together to grow towards that direction which we are talking about today. What we should do together. If you can start with any one of you.
See, two things I'll add here. See, firstly, we all have to understand we are not just competing within India against each other.
Correct. Correct.
This is all these workloads of AI ML are latency agnostic. That means they can reside anywhere in the world.
Yes.
So whichever country will move fast, they will get the lion's share in that particular
Correct.
thing. So as a industry together, if we don't move fast, India will be left behind. So that is the point number one. In my view, power availability will be a critical thing, because we have large population also. If any place centers come in the way of people interest, there could be a lot of oppositions also. So what we have to as a country see, how do we ensure power is always available and more of that is sustainable power. So that is something a clearly focus groups will have to work, and a lot of that is controlled by government. So a lot of government intervention will be required there.
Sorry, Sudhir, I'll hand over.
Yeah, Basanth.
Sudhir made a very important part in the very beginning of the session. So, supply chain. So, one way to also reduce and make it more sustainable is reducing the upfront capex costs and also the opex costs. Most of the technology products that goes into the builds have massive amount of tariffs, imports, and in essence what's making it is the build up of the project gets even more expensive. The cost to serve to your end customer also gets more expensive. So how to remain competitive is to goes we go back to the drawing board, analyze and prioritize which of these spends actually is relating and cascading it to that particular expenditure, and then go about doing the local manufacturing. And that is also gives a massive leeway to address the supply chain difficulties, because local production essentially means that you're also sourcing raw materials, most of it locally, and then you're also setting up a production. But at times, while we are trying to do this, it also comes with a massive cost, because it becomes counterintuitive. Once we are saying we're going to reduce carbon emissions, but setting up new R&D facilities, new manufacturing setups, that will too shoot up. So an integrated and a balanced approach is key, I believe.
Absolutely. And Sudhir, hails from that procurement background. Sudhir, from the supply chain standpoint, if you can throw some lights.
No, see, India is actually moving very fast to be a global, superpower, and there are ways and means to actually demonstrate. And one of them, the subtle way of actually this being a digital India, is actually subtle way of actually telling the soft power, what we call it, and hence together as an industry we have to create that dominance, not only here but across the region, and that's what we will have to do. And from to enable this, what the government has actually tried to give lot of support, whether it is data center specific policies and so on so forth. But what we as an industry are still facing certain challenges, but I think overall the industry is coming together, whether it is the partner ecosystem, whether it is the investors that are actually looking this market very
True.
lucrative to invest. So I'm actually very thoughtful that this actually will be good times to be in. From a supply chain standpoint, I have also already put it across that there are a couple of things that will have the reduction in the import will definitely will help us to drive that initiative, reduce cost. Once you reduce the costs, there is a that all follows across. So my sense is it's still to be a right times to be here.
Absolutely. So I think I was just looking at my note. I think there are a couple of points that if we do not move towards this strategy, probably we will be behind. We will not be able to take the leadership positions in the world. Be that the development we are planning, probably we will not be able to be there. And the impact, economic impact, which is, we talked about it, even that gets affected. So I think we all are on the same page that it is needed, and we are progressing towards it. All of us are working towards it. So it has to be, built within the country. So with this, I think we have a couple of minutes left. If I open this forum for the rest of the audience, if you have any questions towards the panelist, anybody? No questions? All right, thank you. So with this, I think thank you so much. Thank you.